allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please join me in a moment of silence. Thank you very much. Please be seated. Remember to silence your cell phones. First item on the agenda, are we all affixed? Is citizen concerns. If there's anyone to speak on an item not already addressed on the agenda, in the room, on the phone.
The phone is not working,
Okay.
so no one on the phone as of right now.
Well, our every intention is to make the phone work. Number to call in if you're watching live on YouTube is 712-224-6014 at any time. Hearing no citizen concerns, item 2 is approval of the agenda. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Items 3 through 6 constitute a consent agenda of routine action items to be considered by one motion. Items pass unanimously unless a separate vote is requested by a board member. Item 3 is approval of the minutes of the June 30th meeting. Item 4 is approval of the claims. Item 5 from juvenile detention is to receive the juvenile detention June population report. Item 6 from secondary roads includes A, approve the underground utility permit for Frontier Communications for fiber optic cable and equipment on Lee Avenue. And B, approve the underground utility permit for CenturyLink for a telephone drop on Pocahontas Avenue. I'll move the consent agenda.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 7 now from Emergency Management. SOCNet is for action. This is approval of resolution for the 2020 Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
Good afternoon. I have Dawn here with me from Simcoe. As part of this plan, instead of doing it individual counties like has previously happened, we were required to do a regional plan. So what we did through our local emergency planning committee, the 5 counties represented by that, Woodbury, Plymouth, Ida, Cherokee, and Monona, all came together to do a regional plan. Plymouth County was the fiscal agent for this, and through contract we hired Simcoe for the 5 counties to complete that plan.
As project coordinator, the plan was submitted and reviewed by the state and FEMA. It's under its final review right now. We were granted permission on July 1 to present to counties and other participating jurisdictions to adopt pending approval. And when FEMA approves the plan, it will be a status as approved pending adoption. So it kind of works both ways. It's invalid with either piece missing. The county is the jurisdiction standing as itself, representing unincorporated areas. So today we ask that you adopt by resolution, pending approval by FEMA, the 2020 Regional Hazard Mitigation Plan.
The key with this is any mitigation projects moving forward, if this is not adopted and approved, we would be ineligible for those funds. So typically what happens, depending on what the project looks like, it's things like the outdoor warning sirens or additional berms that are permanent. So what that is the state has a share of that as well as the federal. So typically it's anywhere about 25% of the local match on mitigation projects is what the jurisdiction would be responsible for. During a disaster such as our COVID-19 response, the federal share is 75%. The state of Iowa pitches in an additional 10% with an approved adopted plan. So then our local share is only 15%. The mitigation funds, when we apply for those, there is a dollar amount the state sets aside for, it's about, I think it's 10% of the total disaster. So any eligible expenses that are filed, 10% of that automatically gets set aside for future mitigation projects.
Any questions about the plan or process?
Not for me.
Doesn't obligate us to anything additional that we wouldn't have if we were just a standalone county, or?
No, when the county agreed with Plymouth County to participate in the regional plan, that was the only obligation to recognize your role. If individual jurisdictions have a project to submit, they also have to adopt at their level for their jurisdiction to be eligible.
So our local share for the actual rewrite of the plan was 10% of the total project, which was $6,001. So each of the 5 counties paid that, and that was budgeted through the EM Commission fiscal year 18, I believe. And then Plymouth County would send out the reports based off of the progression of the plan.
Any other questions? Thanks for your work on it.
I'll move approval.
I'll second the motion by Potabom. Anything else to add?
We just need 2 original copies if we can. I have an additional one if you guys need so, or
We got one here.
I don't know which one's easier.
Stirred it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Just a couple minutes ahead of our 4:40 p.m. set time, but David, if you could still come up and begin discussing before we open the public hearing. This is item 8, Community and Economic Development, Director David Gleiser. A is going to be a public hearing to discuss a proposed zoning district map amendment for weed.
Thank you, Chairman. David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development.
Did you guys get the call-in number working?
No.
There's one caller on the line.
That's not me. On June 30th, last Tuesday, the board approved Ms. Gail D. Weed's request to rezone her parcel number 874614100007, currently addressed 2206 240th Street, from the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District to the Agricultural Estate Zoning District for future residential development use. It should also be noted that the applicant is running a minor subdivision application concurrently with this request. As stated during the Zoning Commission and Board of Supervisors' previous public hearings on this request, this property is located in a quarter-quarter section that already has 2 residences. In our county ordinance, section 3.01 states that no more than 2 residences shall be allowed on any quarter-quarter section. And if a property owner wishes to subdivide to create more than 2 parcels on a quarter-quarter section, concurrently with the plating process, the zoning designation should be changed from the AP zoning district to an appropriate classification. The future land use map within the county's planning for 2025 general development plan identifies this area as being zoned agricultural, and as such, the agricultural estate zoning district is a good fit for this proposal, as its purpose is to provide for a limited increase in the amount of small acreage development, including a controlled expansion of residential uses in appropriate locations throughout the county, while also maintaining the agricultural characteristic of the neighborhood by still allowing agricultural uses. This property is not located in a floodplain. It is in the first rank of the Luss Hills and is adjacent to the Luss Hills Scenic Byway. This issue, along with others, were discussed at length during the Zoning Commission's June 22nd public hearing on the request, and following the Commission's public hearing on this request, they voted 3-0 to recommend approval of the rezone. The Commission also approved the subdivision plat as proposed, and the Board of Supervisors will review the minor subdivision application today, subsequent to the completion of this rezone request. Outside of any additional public comments or questions, the staff recommendation is that the board open and close the public hearing on the proposed map amendment, conduct the second reading of the ordinance, and waive the third reading. This rezone will be effective upon publication once it's published, and I would make note that just consulting with the county attorney's office right prior to this meeting, it was mentioned that there may be an issue with the wording of this agenda item and how we move forward in terms of adoption date. Joshua, could you elaborate on that a little, please?
Yeah, so the actual adoption of the map amendment isn't listed on the agenda. We typically, if you're asking the board to approve that today, it should be listed on the agenda. So I guess my recommendation would be that it be listed on a future agenda. Otherwise, you could potentially create a title problem or title objection in the future if there was a title attorney who was extra picky. So I think that's the best way to do it, is to actually have that listed on the agenda.
I would apologize to the board and to the applicant upon submitting the agenda materials. I was unaware there needed to be specific language in the agenda item.
Didn't they, is this the one that was on last week?
Yes, sir.
And so, didn't they adopt it last week or what?
No, we,
Well, so I wasn't here last week, but my understanding is that the first reading was approved. And based in the ordinance adoption process, you have to have the first reading, and then you can waive subsequent readings. If you don't waive the readings, you have to have 3 total readings. On a lot of these zoning ones where there's maybe not a lot of input on them, we would typically waive at least the 3rd reading. But you conduct the reading, you approve the reading, and then you have to actually formally approve the ordinance, which is the map amendment itself.
Okay. They didn't do that last week?
no, last week we held a public hearing on the application of the request to rezone it. We held the
Well,
first reading.
Right, and you can't approve the ordinance until you've had your readings.
Right.
The readings are separate from adoption of the ordinance, and what I'm saying is the actual adoption of the ordinance is not properly before the board because it's not listed on the agenda.
Could a solution then be to, with my recommendation, would be to just conduct the second reading, and then we could amend the language on the item next week for the 3rd and final reading and have the board adopt it then?
Either way, I mean, so you can approve the second reading today, you can go ahead and waive the 3rd reading, and then next week it could just be an agenda item that approves the actual amendment. Or you could do what would functionally be a 3rd reading next week and then actually approve the ordinance itself. So,
What would you recommend?
if there's no comments on at the reading today, I don't see any reason to have the 3rd reading.
With that, it is, we are past the 4:40 PM set time to see if there are comments, so the public hearing is now open for anyone who'd wish to speak for or against this item. Hearing none, I'd move it be closed.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. And now the only action we can take is to conduct the second reading and waive the 3rd and final reading, or just to conduct the second reading.
No, if the board would like to waive the 3rd reading, if you feel like there's not enough discussion that would warrant a 3rd reading, I would recommend waiving that 3rd reading, and then I'll present an agenda item next week for adoption. It would become effective upon publication, and by that time, we should be able to coordinate with the Journal on the effective publication date, so I'll be able to present that information with the board as well.
All right, then I'll move to conduct a second reading and waive the 3rd and final reading.
Second.
Second by Potabom. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now at our 4:45 PM set time from Board Administration, Finance Director Dennis Butler. A is a public hearing on the general obligation county road improvements loan agreement and bonds. The public hearing is now open for anyone who wishes to speak.
Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I am back before you again, as I have been on previous occasions, to oppose and object to your intent to enter into the 2020 General Obligation Urban Renewal County Road Improvements Loan Agreement and issue general obligation bonds in the amount not to exceed $10 million. You are obligating the taxpayers of the Sergeant Bluff-Luton School District to long-term debt of $10 million. And on top of that, I believe there's about close to $2 million in interest that you are also obligating the taxpayers of Sergeant Bluff-Luton School District to pay. So given that information, the school board has directed me to be here and to object to that plan. Thank you.
Thank you. Sir?
Some of you know me. My name is Justin Iverson, volunteer fire chief for Salix. I oversee the Liberty Township, so all the industry out there. From our side of it, we are in favor of the proposal. Due to the size of the trucks that we're running and the equipment that's going up and down our gravel roads and the deterioration that they've been in over the last however many years, we're running 56,000 pound trucks on dual axles, and we're to the point where season changes, heavy rains, we're down to 15, 25 miles an hour trying to get to an emergency. Ambulance is close to the same thing. Throughout the county, I've heard the same thing from a lot of other departments. I also farm too, so, and unfortunately we're running 88,000 pound trucks down gravel roads, and they're in the same shape when you have two semis going side by side on a gravel road. It gets pretty sketchy occasionally, so. From our side of it, we would like to see the upgrade. The only thing that we brought up was we would also like to see, depending on what you guys do throughout the year, upgrading the budget a little bit, putting a little bit more towards just the upkeep of the roads, instead of getting kind of in this bind again. So appreciate you guys' time. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else to speak?
If I can just follow up.
Yes.
We do not object to the improvement of the roads. That's obvious. They need to be improved. We just object to the way that you plan to finance improvement of the roads. I think you have to think long-term. 10 years from now, when this debt is paid off, what is the long-term plan to maintain the county roads? Seems to me you don't have a long-term plan. You have a short-term plan to improve the roads by tiffing one entity within the county and paying for it through the TIF. I certainly understand TIF and don't mind TIF when it's used appropriately, but by using it as a cash cow to pay for something that should be paid by other means, it just doesn't hold water. So thank you.
Any other comments? Any comments from the board members?
Well, I think it's immature to say that we don't have a long-range plan. We are spending $10 million to bring our roads back up to where they need to be, and we have been funding secondary roads as much as we can properly in these last few years. But this has been an issue where the roads have basically been in disrepair for 3 decades plus. And I just don't agree with your assessment that we don't have a long-range plan. We need to bring them back up to spec, and I don't think there's any thought that once they're fixed, we're not going to maintain them again. We're not going to continue with maintenance. So Mr. Earlywine, I disagree with your assessment that we don't have a long-range plan. So, sure.
Well, it's pretty easy to argue that if you had a long-term plan, the roads wouldn't be, and the culverts and the bridges wouldn't be in the shape that they're in today. I mean, that's obvious. I'm not going to argue that they don't need help and don't need maintained and they don't need improved and many times replaced when we're talking to the culverts and the bridges. I mean, it's obvious. It is absolutely obvious. We just disagree with the way you want to finance the project. That's what we disagree with, respectfully disagree with. Thank you.
The board has spent years and several town hall meetings, this current board, myself for the longest time on the board, apologizing for the inaction and lack of a long-term plan from previous boards in the decades past. There is no meaningful way to improve the condition other than to rebuild the base by more than 1 inch, and that requires several $1 million. The board explored several funding mechanisms, and through deliberation and public comment and financial input, legal input, we decided this is the best way to make sure it happens and make sure it happens as soon as possible, because I don't want to be out on the road apologizing again for the fact that the board didn't have a long-term plan. This is a long-term plan. That is why the number is what it is, and that's why we're making good on the impetus CF Industries gave us to promote continued growth and economic development and the brass tacks of infrastructure. Any other comments? I'll move the public hearing to be closed.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no comments. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is approval of resolution expressing intent to enter into 2020 general obligation urban renewal county road improvements loan agreement and issue 2020 general obligation bonds in an amount not to exceed $10 million. Dennis, any extra input?
Nope, not at this time.
I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Potabom. Any discussion? Andy, anyone on the phone
I have 2 people on the phone.
that wants to discuss it? I guess we would know if they did. Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. We are now slightly past our 4:50 p.m. set time, which is item 10 from Community and Economic Development Director David Gleiser. Item A is a public hearing to discuss a proposed zoning district map amendment, in parentheses, Swanger.
Thank you, Chairman. David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development. Sort of same motions and process as we just went through a few minutes ago. Just for some background and some context, on June 30th, the board approved the request submitted by Mr. Chad Swanger of the Tarry v. Swanger Irrevocable Trust, owners of lots 1 through 5 in the Jan Subdivision, part of Government Lot 1 of Section 2 in the Woodbury Township, to change their zoning designation from the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District to General Commercial Zoning District for future commercial development. It should be noted that the applicant is not running a minor subdivision application concurrently with this request, but will do so in the future once professional services can be rendered. As stated during the Zoning Commission and Board of Supervisors' previous public hearings on this request, this property is located along the Highway 20 corridor about a mile east of Sioux City. A western portion of the project area on parcel number 8847-022-00002 is located in the floodplain. This issue, along with others, were discussed at length during the Zoning Commission's June 22nd public hearing on the request. Following their public hearing, they voted 3-0 to recommend approval of the rezone with the following conditions. One condition being that the applicant enter into a recorded paving agreement in compliance with the terms of the current county paving policy I just want to let the board know that we do have an agreement, and that will be presented to the applicant. We would hold off from actually publishing before we get that signed between the county and the applicant. Comply with any and all easements and encroachment agreements, including area utilities not limited to Northern Natural Gas on parcel 8847-022-00002, and implement efforts including building and site design, landscaping, and screening to minimize any adverse effects of future land use or development. Outside of any additional public comments or questions, the staff recommendation is that the board would open and close the public hearing on the proposed map amendment. I would suggest conducting the second reading, waiving the third reading, and next week I will present an agenda item for publication and effective date. Adoption, and effective date.
Thank you. Is there anyone to comment during this public hearing?
I have a question for David.
Yeah.
Have they agreed to the paving requirement verbally, or do we wait and?
Verbally, we do not have executed document at this time.
That's what I said. You're going to give them a document to execute, but have they agreed to that prior to you sending them the actual paperwork?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
That was the verbally part.
Yeah. Had to say yes in order for us to get to the dance, I suppose.
Hearing no other public comments, move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is a motion to conduct the second reading of the ordinance and waive the third and final reading. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by Radig. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. We are now slightly past our 4:55 p.m. set time. This is item C, public hearing to discuss a proposed zoning district map amendment, Peterson. Public hearing is now open.
Same motions as we just went through, Supervisors. Again, David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development. I will provide the board and anyone listening some context as we just did on the other items. On June 30th, the board approved the request submitted by Mr. Brian D. Peterson to change the zoning designation for his parcels 8846-303-00012 and parcel number 8846-303-00004 and parcel number 8846-303-00006. All parcels located within the Floyd Township. The request is to change the zoning designation from the Agricultural Preservation Zoning District to Agricultural Estates for future residential development use. The applicant is running a minor subdivision application concurrently with this request, and the board will receive that presentation later today as well. As stated during the Zoning Commission and Board of Supervisors' previous public hearings on this request, this property is located in a quarter section that already has 2 residences. Section 3.01 of the zoning ordinance states that no more than 2 residences shall be allowed on any quarter section, and if a property owner wishes to subdivide to create more than 2 parcels on a quarter section, then concurrently with the platting process, the zoning designation should be changed from AP to an appropriate classification. It's been noted that the future land use map within the county's planning for 2025 general development plan does identify this area as being zoned rural residential, which is equivalent to our current suburban residential zoning district. This provides for a much higher residential population density, and it does restrict the land use to primarily single-family residential. Another factor that's been taken into consideration for identifying an appropriate zoning designation for these parcels in this request is that while parcel 8846-303-00006 includes about 1 acre in the floodplain zone A, the most recent draft flood map from FEMA, which we anticipate being adopted in the next 18 months, has shown the entire project area being in the special flood hazard area. However, just recently on July 2nd, our office received new mapping imagery from for this area. It shows a portion of the project area not being in the special flood hazard area as previous draft maps had shown. We did pass those out ahead of time, and I believe we have copies available for the public if they'd like to see those as well. Although the newest imagery reduces the amount of area being in the special flood hazard area as before, or as we had previously known, our office received a follow-up message from the consultants working with FEMA and the Iowa Department of Natural Resources on the mapping modeling, and they reinforced previous recommendations from the state floodplain coordinator and various FEMA staff that the zoning commission still recommend requiring owners of lots in this subdivision to elevate 1 foot above the base flood elevation as determined by the Iowa Department of Natural Resources. As such, the agricultural estate zoning district, we believe as staff, is a good fit for this proposal, as its purpose is to provide for a limited increase in small acreage development and a controlled expansion of residential uses in appropriate locations throughout the county, while also maintaining the agricultural characteristic of the neighborhood by still allowing agricultural uses. This request was discussed at length during the Zoning Commission's June 22nd public hearing. On this request, numerous stakeholders provided their written recommendations to address all known impediments to the proposed development site. Following the Commission's public hearing, they voted 3-0 to recommend approval of the rezone. The Commission did also approve the plat for the minor subdivision that's being run concurrently with this application, with a condition that the lots be serviced by an internal road or cul-de-sac, and that deed restrictions be placed on all lots that would require any structure on the property to be elevated and built 1 foot above the base flood elevation as determined by the Iowa Department of Natural Resources, and also in conformance with the county floodplain regulations. Outside of any public testimony, the staff recommendation is to open and close the public hearing, conduct the second reading, waive the third reading, and next week I will present an agenda item for the adoption and effective dates.
Anyone to speak during the public hearing? Again, this is just for the zoning classification, not the approval of the plat.
Correct.
Anyone on the phone? Still 2 people? Hearing no public comment, I'll move the public hearing be closed.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item D is a motion to conduct the second reading in the ordinance and waive the third and final reading. Is there a motion?
I'll move it.
Second the motion by Radig. Hearing no discussion.
I have a question.
Yes.
This would just be,
Yes, just for the agricultural
third reading. Okay.
estates. All in favor say aye.
aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item 11 now from the same Community and Economic Development Director, David Gleiser. Includes a motion to receive the Zoning Commission's recommendation from their June 23rd meeting to approve the final plat.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development. This is the follow-up minor subdivision application that it's being run currently with the Gale D. Weed rezone request, which the board just took action on. To provide anyone in the audience or listening some context, Gale D. Weed, owner of parcel number 874614100007, which is address 2206 240th Street, is proposing an 8.98 acre subdivision for future residential purposes and the construction of a new house. It's, again, being presented concurrently with the zoning map amendment request, and it's basically going to allow a family member to reside on this newly created lot. The property is not located in the floodplain. It's in the first rank of the Luss Hills. It is greater than 2 miles of any incorporated area, and so therefore it does not require any extraterritorial review. On June 22nd, the zoning commission voted to recommend approval of this minor subdivision with no conditions. On June 30th, the Board of Supervisors approved the rezone request, conducted the first reading, and this evening you held the second reading and waived the third. Next week, the zoning will become adopted on next Tuesday, and we'll present an effective date. So outside of any additional public comments or questions, staff recommendation is for the board to receive the zoning commission's June 22nd report and approve the final plat as proposed.
Are there any such questions?
Dave, do you think there will be an issue if the approval date for the plat is prior to the zoning map amendment adoption? Because usually why we run them concurrently is that you can't have a subdivision plat that conflicts with the zoning designation for that parcel.
Would a recording date for the plat be the effective date on that, or?
I think that it should either be deferred to next week or approval tonight would be contingent upon approval of the zoning change next week.
I think we should defer them.
I can support that decision and would recommend that we defer the plat until next week after the rezone is adopted.
I'll move to postpone item A for 1 week.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is a motion to approve the Tarry addition minor subdivision plat and authorize the chairman to sign the resolution.
Am I assuming we're going to do the same thing?
I'm sorry, Chairman, did you just?
It's separately listed, so we would need to delete this one as well. Is that correct?
On the, did you say Terry edition?
Yes.
So we're tabling the Terry edition, correct? Is that what you said?
I was moving on to item B. We were on item A to receive the recommendation.
My apologies.
Yeah, they're already confused enough. Let's slow down.
I am sorry, I was just, never mind.
It's okay. So again, we would need to delete this as well, correct?
I would say it's appropriate to do item A, vote on item A, and then I would table item B. I apologize for that.
Well then, is there, understand?
We could move to rescind or vote on A and then reconsider it.
For the minutes, there's a consensus that it applies to B. Is that correct? That's correct.
Oh, okay.
So item A, please.
Item A. I would recommend that the board receive the zoning commission's June 22nd meeting to approve the final plat.
I'll move to receive.
Second.
Second by Potabom.
June 22nd or June 23rd?
It's June 22nd. That is a typo. I apologize.
I didn't even want to get into that.
Yeah, neither do I.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 4-0. Item C now is a motion to receive the zoning commission's recommendations from their June
22nd.
22nd meeting to approve the final plat.
Thank you, Chairman. Again, David Gleiser, Director of Community Economic Development. To provide some context, Brian D. Peterson, owner of parcel number 8846-303-00012, parcel number 8846-303-00004, and parcel number 8846-303-00006, all within the Floyd Township, proposes a 13-lot and 1 outlot minor subdivision for future residential purposes. As you know, this proposal is being presented concurrently with the zoning ordinance map amendment request to allow more than 2 residential structures in a quarter section. A portion of this property is currently located in the floodplain, and as was just mentioned, a large portion of the project area will likely be brought into the floodplain once FEMA's new flood maps are published within probably the next 18 months. This property is greater than 2 miles from any incorporated area, so therefore it does not require any extraterritorial review. On June 22nd, the Zoning Commission voted to recommend approval of the plat with the condition that the lots be serviced by an internal road or cul-de-sac and deed restrictions be placed on all lots that would require any structure built on the property be required to elevate 1 foot above the base flood elevation as determined by the Iowa Department of Natural Resources and in accordance with the county's floodplain regulations. And on June 30th, the Board of Supervisors approved the rezone request, held the first reading of the ordinance. As you know, you just held the second and waived the third reading. So that will become adopted next week and effective upon publication. Outside of any additional public comments or questions, and I do know that the applicant has some information they would like to provide, the staff recommends the board receive the Zoning Commission's June 22nd report and reach consensus with the applicant on lot access. If necessary, the board could table the item until the applicant can provide a final plat as it is to be recorded, and then the board can authorize the chairman to sign the resolution and approve the final plat.
Again, this is just to receive the recommendation before voting on approval.
Correct. And now that we will have an extra week for the adoption date for that rezone to come back, I think it'd be a really appropriate time to try to reach consensus with the applicant on the issue of lot access.
Anyone else to speak on this item?
On this item, you want to seek that? Or,
This is just to receive their,
This is to receive the zoning commission's recommendation, and then I think it would be a good step for the board to have a discussion with the applicant and try to obtain consensus on access, because as the plat is presented, it does not reflect an internal road or cul-de-sac as the zoning commission recommendation reflects. To my knowledge, the board can approve the plat as proposed. So with that, I know the applicant has presented some information that they just shared with our office recently, and I believe the board was recipient of that email communication as well. But for the record, I will let them present that information, if that's okay.
This item or next item?
So just procedurally, I think you need to approve
to receive it.
to receive, and then
Okay.
discussion should be on the next item.
Thank
I'll
you.
move to receive.
I'll second the motion by Radig. Hearing no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those say nay. Passes 4-0. Item D now is a motion to approve the Walnut View Addition minor subdivision plat and authorize the chairman to sign the resolution, or motion to table the Walnut View Addition minor subdivision until the applicant can provide a final plat as it is to be recorded.
Thank you.
My name is Daniel Peterson from Lawton, Iowa. I sent an email to the supervisors and to Mr. Gleiser. Did you guys all get copies of that? If not, I have.
I did not. Was it in the backup?
No, they just
Oh,
have it
it's,
up.
yeah, never mind, sorry, it was up here.
So given the discussions we've had the last week with you guys on driveway and access onto the road, there was a lot of comments on whether it was safe, not safe, and I decided that I would go and get some of the information that I could, factual information that we could all digest, have a discussion about. So in doing that, I'll summarize it quickly. What I did is I went in different directions from the proposed location. The map that I sent you kind of shows you where each of those are. And what I did is went and counted not only field agricultural driveways, but also went and looked at building and home access at those locations in basically 1 mile increments to give you some data on how many driveways and access points per mile there is. I tried to cover similar roads, one going to 210th Street to Sergeant Bluff, It was flat, straight, shows up to 32 homes per mile, or 32 driveways per mile. Further down the road, a half mile down the road from our proposed location, we showed there are 14 driveways per mile there. There's slight curves and slight elevation to that. Further down the road, a mile from there, there was 10 driveways per mile, and that's around a large curve around the same 141, same road traffic that you would have. At our proposed location, the recommendation, our plat shows all 11 lots across 141, and we, upon the recommendation or the comments of Mark Naras, we went and looked and we said there would actually be 7 driveways there from our location. So a few of them would have shared driveways. It was option 2 on his letter dated earlier, dated on June 17th. There's already 2 field access points to our property. So it would actually be 5 new driveways, total of 7 into that access point, onto 141, 2 onto 210th Street. So with that, given the neighbors and the existing driveways there, we would end up with 10 homes in a 1 mile radius, which is lower, the same as the lowest one 2 miles away, lower than half a mile away, and quite a bit difference compared to 210th Street, closer to Sergeant Bluff. So with that information, what we would like to do is make the request that you approve the plat as it's drawn without the internal road, and let me know if you had any other questions.
Without an internal road?
Without an internal. So it would be the plat as it was presented. Thank you for your time.
Are we still split 2-2, or are we?
I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask. Unfortunately, I got this just this afternoon, so I didn't have a chance to go back down there again.
Yeah.
And check these out. When you're talking about driveways, are you including road access roads and driveways as the same?
So what I did is, on the third sheet, you can kind of see the detail of it. And quite honestly, I use Google Map and I use Beacon to go take a look at these and go up and down the road. And I broke it into road intersections, which was intersections with Buchanan Avenue, 220th, 230th, counted those as one intersection. I counted field driveways, so agricultural field driveways, and then I used home and building driveways. And the comparison numbers I gave you is all based off the home and buildings, not including any of the agricultural driveways.
That was one of the things I want to know, because they are different.
Right, yep, and that's why, so on this, you can see the difference, and I broke those out, and when I used them for comparative purposes, I just did home and buildings.
I hate to say it, but when I got this today, I read it about 13 times and I still didn't understand it, so.
I tried to, in the email, I tried to make it simpler, and then I gave you the data behind it.
And the good thing is, this is going to have to be postponed for a week. I would guess similar to the others, the ordinance anyway.
I don't know.
Are we in the same boat as the other two?
I don't think
David?
it's in the same boat as the other two.
If we're still divided, though,
Yeah, no, that's,
it'd be decided next week, because we'll have a 5th member.
because I want to go back down there. Because I told you I'd be open and honest about it, and truthfully, I got this while I was at work today, so I didn't have a chance. My other
Holiday, we were late getting.
My other question to you is, when you're counting access onto the road, are you from both sides of the road or just one side?
I included both sides of the road.
And where yours will all be on one side?
Right.
Onto
in-
141.
In total numbers, I used mine and the neighbors, which are across the road, those access points. So I used the same data across all the points.
Because I was just trying to visualize this from, and again, I sold my motorcycle 5 years ago, so I haven't been on 141 as much as I used to. I drive 210 all the time. So I was trying to visualize both sides of the road. Because, if it was 5 on each side, I wouldn't have nearly as much a problem as 10 on one side.
Well, if we go down that path, then it's probably worse for the 210th access point.
But they're coming up to a stop sign. So they're supposed to be slowing down.
Well, in that case, we could add a stop sign to 141 if we're that concerned about it.
Ooh, I don't think so.
Well,
Like I said, we could go more worthless and put a yield sign.
well, hopefully stop sign's more effective.
Ron Peterson, and so you said, well, you wouldn't be opposed if there was 5, so we're only asking to have 5 there and then 2 on the other.
I said
on the other road.
5 and 5 versus 10. I was just putting numbers out there. I want to go back down and look at it.
Even with the additional driveways, there's still less than there are south of there half a mile and west of there a mile and a half.
That's what I want to go see.
Yeah, and we're abiding by all the rules you have in the county. And so if you have a problem with this, it's like, well, then you should maybe look at the rules as they're written, and because we are supplying this to you as the rule, we're not asking you to change any of the rules. We are just trying to abide by the rules as they're written by the county.
And if we receive our thing from our zoning commission, they recommended with an internal road. So I'm trying to figure out a way if we can work around this.
So when he was working on his data, we're trying to figure out, so I don't know that they did any research or they had any reason other than, we can't figure out why they would not approve this, because according to the rules as they're written, we actually submitted a plan that is equal to or better than what the county requires. And so we can't submit a project to you that I can't bid against the ghost. We can't like submit something to be at the whim of somebody's just, it's like the rules are, we submitted it as the rules are written for the county.
And again, I want to go down and look at it, because I'm not saying that you would give me any false information, but I was a police officer long enough to know that when you're talking to two sides, sometimes they both have their own way of
So is it more
verbalizing
safe to
it.
pull out on a road where it's straight or where it's a curve?
Straight,
Is it more safe to pull out on a road where it's level or where there's elevation?
level.
So these would
Yep.
be on a straight highway with a level elevation.
Well, I don't know that it's level.
Well, the road isn't,
I mean, the road isn't. That's what I'm talking about, is the road, not the driveway, because they're coming up to that. And again, I told you I would be fair and honest and I'd be transparent with you. And since I only got this today, I haven't had a chance to go back down there and look at some of these other places that you said you did. And that's what I'm going to do.
The 2 people that complained about it last week when we were here, they both have 2 accesses to their properties. And it's like, well, if it's too dangerous for us to get one for an access, it's like, well, maybe you should take some of those accesses away.
Again, driveways or accesses? Are they? Because field access is a completely different animal.
They have 2 driveways.
Okay. And again, I'd have to go look at that.
And on the color-coded thing, on the one a half a mile south of there, isn't there, how many accesses are there on that? Is it 14? Yeah. And we're asking to have 7. And we have 2 existing. So
And
we're
like
only
I said,
asking for 5 more.
I don't know where the rest of them are, but until I go look at it, again, I'm not going to vote for it. So if we're still at the 2-2, you might be better off to give us that week. You know, if I'd gotten this yesterday, I probably would have already went down there and did it. But I got it today and I was working, so I couldn't take off and run down there. Because I will go look at it.
So the driveways, is what they're called?
Yeah.
One issue. Do you have any comments on the updated floodplain map? It doesn't show it all in there, but there's still pieces of it that are, and
I have not seen that.
okay.
My understanding is that the building permit would state that the elevation that the house needs to be built at, and like if it needed to be elevated 1 foot or 2, and that would be taken care of during the zoning process, or during the building permit process, because if somebody wanted to build a home, because there are homes built in a floodplain, they're just built above the floodplain, is that correct?
Yeah, and I talked with Dan a little bit about exactly how that restriction would be enforced. Through a zoning permit, they can enforce the actual floodplain itself. My understanding is that there's a recommendation from DNR or whoever it is that even for the lots that wouldn't technically be in the floodplain, that they would still recommend that they be 1 foot above the base flood elevation. So if that was something that the board wanted to require, the best way to enforce that would probably be a notation on the plat itself. And then when the plat's filed, basically for each of the lots, they would have that restriction, and it could be enforced during the permitting process. So that's something to look at as far as if the subdivision plat is changing in any way, then that should be notated on the plat. And if the number of driveways is changing from what's actually on the plat, as far as if there's some shared driveways, the plat may need to be updated in that regard to show the easements.
I believe that the plat today doesn't even, my understanding is that plat, because the driveways are to be worked out with the secondary roads department for their approval of each one. I don't know that the driveways are spelled out on the plat. I mean, there's an existing driveway and it is on there. The individual driveways for all of those as submitted by the final plat doesn't show them.
Yeah, and it might be a question for the surveyor, but typically if you have a shared driveway on a plat, since it's an easement between the two adjoining property owners, the easement would be noted on the plat. So that's a question that should at least be asked to make sure that the plat is proper in that regard if they're going to use the shared driveways. But I think somebody asked earlier whether this one is in the same position as the other ones as far as with the
ordinance?
zoning amendment. And I think that it is, that you shouldn't approve the subdivision plat prior to that change. Otherwise, you could have a potential problem with the title opinion attorneys down the road. So I think it would be wise to defer action to next week on that.
I will move to defer.
Second.
Motion by Raddick, second by Potabom. 1 week is sufficient.
Well, yeah, but I think that it's good that you're having this discussion, and if there's going to be, something that the applicants need to do to make it acceptable, then it would probably be a good idea to ask them now so that they know next week what they can present that would be acceptable to help it move forward.
Can you add a bunch of topsoil so it's not in a floodplain?
If only Woodbury County had.
Or is that
any
going to
hills
be
they
up
could
to
borrow
each
from.
lot buyer to raise their,
What's that?
is that going to be up to each buyer of their lot to raise it up?
And not all, I mean, some of them are elevated enough there
Yeah.
to be walkout basement.
That number seems to keep changing on us, so.
I think it would have to be up to the individual buyer, because if somebody buys 2 lots and you raised a lot that no one's going to build on,
Yeah, as long as they know it.
Yeah.
And that's why you want it in something where that they know what they're buying, that's not a surprise. Yeah, I bought this lot, said I could build on it. Well, you have to raise it 1.5 foot first, or whatever it is.
Yeah, we're not trying to do the wrong thing here.
No.
There is really a lot of people that are very interested.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Might be premature, but my concern is, say you fill this with, and this is not opposed to the zoning change, but I know about where this ground, I know exactly where this ground sits, and the proximity for the safety value for the engineer, or secondary roads. And I'm not trying to put Ben on the spot or Mark if he was here, but it's almost like the crystal ball says that eventually those driveway owners might say, well, we're not happy with as fast these people are driving through here. And this is not your problem. I'm not saying that. But it makes me wonder if somewhere down the road, they're going to say, well, I don't like the speed these people are driving through here. And I, for one, am not going to have any interest in lowering the speed limit where there's almost 1,400 vehicles per day. I just almost can see that happening with the number of drivers. And that's not pointed at you guys. It's just, I'm not going to entertain that
South of
conversation.
there, a half a mile, there's 14 accesses and I don't know how many houses, and have any of those people complained to you?
No, but I'm saying southbound coming around that corner that someone's going to be going faster, and it's just one of those things that I can almost envision coming up, and that's nothing against your development at all. It just seems like that sometimes that people will move in there and then complain about something, and
course, that's where the S.
And again, that's premature, I get that, but as an aside, I will have zero interest in lowering the speed limit on a 1 mile stretch of road for those driveways.
You'd always just ask the question then, so was that the speed limit when you bought the property and speed limit when you decided to build the house there? I mean, that's a choice people make when they move out to an area like this. They choose the land size, the rural nature of where they're at, and they get the benefit of, the occasional farm smells and speed limits that are higher.
And they never complain about them.
Well,
Well, I think I'm not a lawyer, but I think there's a law called moving to the nuisance. It's like, well, if something is already happening and you build a house right beside it, you can't complain about it because you moved to the nuisance.
No, you shouldn't complain about it.
Yeah.
My comments about changing the speed limit are more directed at the board, because I can foresee that coming. It had nothing to do with.
Or a
you,
request to
Brian,
put a stop sign.
Yeah, so, and I'm not trying to talk any of the board members out of it, I'm just, already been accused of not having a long-range plan for something else here tonight, so.
Just as it's like, if you require that there has to be an internal road, I doubt that there will ever be any houses built right there, more than just the driveways that we already have, because you cannot afford, you will not be able to economically build it here. Because somebody else will build, or have a lot where you could build a house where you don't have to build an internal. And I think the probability of that not happening is extremely high. If you require that we have to have an internal road, it'll be a cornfield.
Because you said you did one with the city where you had to build a road.
What's that?
You said you did one where you were within the 2 miles.
So we did, and the lots are a lot more expensive, and the taxes are higher, and that's kind of the trade-off, so.
And I'm sorry if this has been answered already, but the access road potentially would be from the south or the north?
You mean with a frontage type road in there?
Yeah, with the recommendation of the.
I don't know.
They made a recommendation, they made a recommendation without any suggestion.
I don't think they said where.
Okay.
Or thought of where, I think they'd say, well, you can road, figure out where the access is.
Because it says to be serviced by an internal road or a cul-de-sac.
Right.
So I don't think they picked out
They
where.
didn't say from, they didn't make a recommendation one way or the other. I don't think they had any knowledge whatsoever of what the expense would be involved, or the requirements would be for that.
If I may, during the meeting, the commission suggested that the applicant sort of take a timeout, and table the action, and huddle up with the county engineer and try to reconfigure it. But I thought we made it clear that the applicant had already met with the county engineer and my department early into this process. The county engineer indicated his preference for an internal road up front, and the applicants rejected that. And respectfully, we've moved on, and that's how or why the plat is being proposed at this time. And so I guess many times it's been suggested to take a time out and maybe go huddle up with the county engineer and reconfigure or consider that, and the applicants have politely rejected that.
So he came up with option two? Mark came up with option two that was acceptable to the county?
So
That's what we're upon, that's what our thing is for.
It was Mark's idea and compromise to offer the shared driveways. That was the engineer's recommendation after the internal road.
Correct.
So we're just going along with the engineer by saying, okay, shared driveways works. And he said there was plenty of access and level line of sight to be able to pull out onto that road at 55 miles an hour. That's what he said last meeting.
If we had a stage for him to be able to.
We'd have to have you come on up.
He could go out and take that look at it.
But, so my point is that it's been suggested that the applicants go back to the drawing board, and they've politely declined And it's been based on interactions with the staff that are implementing these. So.
Question for anyone who would know. You know, in the back of materials, we see these pictures of flooding of what would be several houses. Adjacent landowners, others we've all individually talked to have mentioned that it's happened a couple times over the years. Let's say you have you're a foot above, you follow all the recommendations, you're extra careful. What's the impact on a house of repeated flooding over the years?
I'm sorry, what was it?
I said, what's the impact on a house of repeated flooding over the years? Even if it's above, starts out above, the car is able to get up on the road. I mean,
You're asking what the cumulative damage could be?
That could be up in the air. I mean, it's,
You know, I can't speak to that, but so I'll tell, it's like, I'm 56 years old, I've lived here my whole life. I've seen water on that field about 3 times. One of them was last year. That was the same water event that flooded the whole town of Horning. And people were able to live right there. I mean, it's like, I can't, and then this is it's actually right on the edge of the foothills of, it isn't like down on the river. This is right on the edge of, some of the land is actually, it's steep enough to have, I believe we have a contractor that says how many houses could have walkout basement? 4 or 5. And so it's like, even enough of these have enough elevation that you could have a walkout basement and still be above the floodplain. And so it isn't like it's, you can't see the 3-dimensional part of it when you look at it on a map. But,
any comments, David, from stakeholders specifically on drainage and how quickly it would drain as opposed to all these other properties during a flood event?
That was a question that I had Dan look up, and if I'm not mistaken, Dan, the response was that the stormwater runoff from what's proposed on the plat would be insignificant in the grand scheme of things.
But
be any different from running off the grass or the cornfield.
It didn't seem like there was much of a response in terms of the farmers' drainage district and stormwater runoff.
You could actually design a little retention pond in the middle of the back, one of the 10 acres, and move some of that dirt to raise elevations, and then the pond could actually increase the value of the properties in question. I mean, I'm not going to require or ask you to require. I'm just throwing that out there as that'd be kind of cool. Yeah.
Don't say it too loud.
Did I get that the board gets to fish in there?
well, yeah, you could connect it to that little stream there.
That's a joke,
nearby.
obviously. Sorry.
Option D, would that be what that is? Is something that flows into the stream or a little pond?
You might be taking it too far.
Moving on. And we're walking. And we're moving on.
Have we voted?
Did we vote?
Postpone this till next week?
Not yet.
Has there been a motion to do so?
Yeah, there's a motion second.
You have the motion in the second, Pat. All in favor to postpone, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Passes 4-0. Joys of zoning and such will return. Item 12 from Secondary Roads, County Engineer, Mark Nara, filling in for him, of course, Ben Kusler, includes A, approval of contract and bond with Dixon Construction for the replacement of the Hancock Avenue Bridge for $603,460.90, and that the board approves and sign the resolution directing the county engineer to electronically sign the contracted bond.
Just one correction, that is on D12, not Hancock. I think there was a small error there. That is adjacent to the city of Pearson.
D12, bridge.
Correct.
Very well. Questions for Ben? No heartburn, Ben?
No heartburn. This is actually city funds, the city of Pearson, and 20% comes from swap.
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Hearing no discussion, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is approval of contract and bond with Dixon Construction for the replacement of the Hancock Avenue Bridge for $501,470, and that the board approves and sign the resolution, directing the county engineer to electronically sign the contract and bond. You need to sing, Ben, is what this
You
says
don't
right
want
here.
that. Just one correction on that also. That is the correct location, dollar amount, and the correct contractor. However, the resolution will have to come back to you tomorrow because there is looks to be an error on the project number. So the correct project number for that project is BROS SWAP parent 135, just so you note it.
Now, do you think we did benefit from these two bridges being in close proximity as far as the bid?
No, actually one's on Hancock, which would be south of Mobile. The other one is just east of Pearson.
Okay.
So,
I thought we were doing two in Pearson this year.
no, there's a box culvert going to be let south of there.
Okay.
So,
I'll move approval.
Second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Ben, here are the signed right of way. This one will come back. Okay. Item 13 from Board Administration, Dennis Butler, includes A, approval of a resolution fixing July 21st at 4:45 p.m. for a public hearing on a proposal to enter into a lease agreement with the Woodbury County Law Enforcement Center Authority.
Exactly what it says there. The the authority this morning did approve the same resolution on the authority side, so they're having their public hearing on the 21st at 11 o'clock. We'll have ours same time. Right after the public hearing, we'll have the leases available to be approved to get this rolling.
Questions, comments, legal advice? Hearing none. I'll move it.
Second.
Second by DeWitt. Hearing no discussion. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Item B is approval to deobligate $7,856 from Senior Community Services Employment Program and $20,000 from Woodbury County Fair allocations.
Okay, in this case, Gene Logan is here if you have any questions. The program that they were administering there on the Senior Community Service Employment Program has been discontinued. It's been moved to another entity or another group. That's where you're going to let me come. Yes. And they volunteered to give back the $78.58, and they'll keep the first quarter. So we put this back in our unobligated funds, which we have none.
Would you like to speak?
Of course I want to speak.
Thank you.
Because I wanted to use this opportunity to thank you for supporting the Senior Community Services Employment Program. We have run that program for about 40 years. And how it works is the Department of Labor contracts with roughly 13 to 15 national sponsors. And those sponsors bid every 5 years for the states they're going to cover. So someone will cover Iowa, but not the national sponsor that we were working with. Because of COVID, they didn't get the RFPs out until later. So even though the program ended June 30, we'll be operating until, for an additional quarter to allow somebody else to pick up the program in our stead. So it's not very often that anybody gives you back money. So I wanted to come up here and actually get to tell you that And if I can just indulge you just for a couple more minutes, I would like you to know that we did get CARES Act money for COVID relief, and I've been spending that instead of spending the general assistance money that we received. So I think we're going to give you about $33,000 unspent from last year, and I would hope, I'm going to continue to spend all of that CARES Act money on everything that I can before I would spend county money. This is not to say that when that money runs out, that I won't be back and be looking for my regular budget again. And I also thought, because we closed the year, that you would like to know we served close to 200 households. We did 26 burials. And, one of the most expensive things that we do besides burials would be shelter. So we through your generosity and your allocation, we've helped about 120 families with rent or mortgage. That's just incredible. So thanks for letting me make that a little bit of a report too.
Thank you.
Because we have this giant crowd here.
I know.
While you're here,
They're all on the phone.
on an unrelated subject matter, thanks for working with the Workforce Development Region to be the, what is it called there? The board support staff, or whatever you want to call it, moving forward. This has been a long process for the Workforce Development Region. Obviously, in the last year, it's gotten to the point we're at. So we look forward to working with you there.
The second part of the deobligation would be toward the county fair. I did speak with Matthew. We did decide potentially to call the fair manager, Andrea Leck, and she did meet with her executive board, and we did allocate $32,000 to the fair this year because the fair has been canceled. They do have a project there for remodeling their carnival bathrooms, which was approved prior to the pandemic, so they'd like to at least get $12,000 of $32,000, so we're suggesting deobligate $20,000 from the fair only for this year. Next year, fair's on, the board will decide, budget time, how much to give.
Yeah, I think in the grand scheme, with the fair being completely canceled, it would be justified to deobligate all of it, but I think it's a small concession to be nice and give them something to do in their downtime. As they say, they can have a use for the money that's budgeted, so I don't have an issue with it.
They haven't asked anything for because they're still going to have their 4-H and their FFA animal showings.
They've asked nothing for that.
They haven't asked for anything for it? Because I know they were hitting up the sponsors of the fair to see if they would sponsor that program, because that's going to still go on. Okay.
I'll move approval to deobligate designated funds.
I'll second.
Motion by DeWitt, second by Radig. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Passes 4-0. Dennis, quickly, how are we on lost funds?
Look, our lost funds, until this happened here, we're actually $20,000 more obligated than we had, and that came about because we did do away with the lease agreement or the rent payment from Correctionville Grocery Store. Seemed that has gone defunct. And as soon as the Correctionville, the development group, Sedcor, I think it is out there, as soon as they get the building sold, we're first, so we'll get about $60,000 back. So with these deobligations here, we're about $7,000 to the good.
All right. Thank you. I think that's important for us to know.
Yep.
Barely in the positive there. Item 14, reports on committee meetings. Anybody? Item 15, citizen concerns. Anyone on the phone? Oh, man. It's a lonely business. Hearing none. Item 16, board concerns. Yes.
I have one, and I was talking to a citizen today and about a residence, or if you want to call it that, an abandoned house down in Luton that they're worried about a safety issue for the kids in the area because it's open and falling apart. And she asked me what the county could do since it's an unincorporated area, so that makes it county. And I told her I didn't know how the county government worked on that, so I'd find out. And unfortunately, so far, I found out that we don't work on that. We have no policy or procedure for public.
Attractive nuisance.
Yeah, attractive, but that'd be, well, actually unattractive nuisance, but, but we have no working policy on, I mean, I told them, from my years with the city, I know you'd call the city housing, they'd go red tag it and give them 30 days to fix it, or the city would do it and bill them. But apparently we don't have anything of any sort of animal like that. I'm not sure if it's anything anybody would ever want, because personally, I don't care if it's out in the middle of the county, you know, an abandoned farm place or something, because people have to drive to get to it. But in a small town, it worries me a little more as a public safety hazard, having a house. And David had told me that he's talked to the guy that owns it who moved to Sioux City and basically just gets, yeah, okay, not going to do anything. And so tomorrow I'll call the lady back and tell her right now there's nothing we can do. I think David is going to at least send another letter, but he said he's talked to the guy and sent letters. But so I wanted to find out how county government works in that case, and I found out it doesn't.
Any other board concerns?
We have the conference board meeting tomorrow, 2:30.
Yes.
Who's all planning to go? I was planning on. I want to read the report and everything.
That's an interesting report.
Yeah.
There's been a few emails I've seen back and forth.
Can three of us go to that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's posted.
It's posted. Are we all able to attend?
I can't because I'm still where I wanted to, because after reading that report, I would like to be there, but I couldn't find someone to come in and work for me.
I'm glad Bob Scott shares that one.
Uh-huh.
What's that?
You're saying, what was the report?
Oh, it was interesting.
Motion to receive this email?
You'll
You'll be there, Mr. Raddick?
Yeah, I'll be there. I was trying to look at the numbers. Dennis, can we have those maybe for, we got a third reading on the TIF deal, right? Next week, plan?
On what kind of information you like?
Maybe it'd be good to have the valuation of Sergeant Bluff. I think it's like 586 million. What the valuation will be after CF is.
I can actually give you a 30-year plan, because I did go ahead and do that to show Sergeant Bluff.
I think it'd be just great to have on the open public record in our meeting. So, and I didn't mean to interrupt.
Show how it gets bigger and bigger and bigger, the release where it gets pretty dramatic.
Because it sounds to me like we're actually, a Woodbury County project in the Sergeant Bluff School District is going to triple their land valuations in 20 years.
They'll potentially double
I-
it. You gotta remember, they got the Port Neal sitting there, they got North Shelton, they got Julita, there's a combination on IGP and part of Port Neal's in West,
Well-
but a lot of it's in Sergeant Bluff.
My math showed they were around 586 million, and I thought the CF was going to be like 1.2 or more.
Be 585 million.
Okay, so they will double their, okay. So, I mean, I think it's still a gift to get double your tax valuation over 20 years, you know, through this whole process, so. And if the state of Iowa came into Woodbury County and offered to add 5.8 billion, right, no, 4.8 billion is Woodbury County, worth of valuations and wanted to spend the growth of that on roads throughout the state, I would fully support that.
I think we have overall support for the project. It'll actually be nice to get out in the rural areas again.
And then they're not actually funding this, they're just not getting the increase in value yet.
Right.
It follows to a T with CF wants to benefit the county as a whole, and that's exactly what this board is doing.
One more thing. Everyone enjoy your last meeting with additional elbow room next week. We won't have this much elbow room, all of us. So take a moment.
So how long is it going to be before Josh gets to come back to the adult table?
Yeah. That'll be, I mean, we gotta consult with the CDC and, you know, I'm sure they'll get back to us in a year or two, so. All right. Hearing no other business, we are adjourned.
Josh,